Hello and welcome to This Is Austin. Wait, no, you're not Austin.
No, I'm not. I'm someone else.
Who are you?
My name's Royce.
Royce?
Yes, nice to meet you.
We got our friend Royce on from Apple Next, and we're going to talk about WWDC and the big elephant in the room. Why is there still no calculator app on the iPad? Out of all the things they announced.
We're past that now. It's too late at this point.
What were your thoughts on WWDC?
I thought it was really cool. I mean, I'm one of those people where I kind of leave every WWDC like, oh man, that's awesome. And then some people are like, oh, you didn't think it was disappointing?
I thought it was one of the best updates in a long time.
I agree.
But it could not have been any more boring from a software side. Every feature that they brought out, I'm like, yeah, that's a really good idea. But snooze.
Yeah, you know, they had their 15-inch MacBook Air. They're updating the Mac Studio, Mac Pro, obviously the Apple Vision Pro, which was the big thing, the one more thing. And yeah, and then they were like, oh, iOS 17, you know, you can AirDrop in a different way now.
Yeah, which again, like it was all good, but so they just absolutely sped run through that just to get to the Vision, which I'm curious what your thoughts on it.
It's a lot of things. So obviously, when it was like first revealed, I'm like, yo, this thing looks wild. Because the first thing they wanted to let us know immediately was like, you can see the eyes. Seeing that transition of like wavy moving thing that like blocks the eyes, it's like blue, and you can see the eyes. I immediately was like, this is like a sci-fi movie.
There's been articles written already about this, but like it's straight up out of Black Mirror. And
yeah, absolutely.
Here's the thing though, is like a couple days before the conference, that leaked, and it was like so ridiculous that everyone's like, this is fake.
It's not
like,
happening.
So like I don't know whether it was an authentic leak or whether someone just like made it as a joke and it just turned out to be real. But like I think it's really cool. I want to be clear. I think it's really cool. This is gonna get a lot of hate, but like I think the price is fully justified.
I actually agree with you.
I say that only because of all the ridiculous amount of new tech that is in this thing.
Absolutely.
$3,500, I'm fine with the price for the product. But I still don't think it's a product that should exist at that price point, because the only people who are going to buy it are like, you know, like super high enthusiast levels. I can't justify this for almost anyone.
It's almost like this should still be testing. Like this should still be in the walls in that room that Apple never lets anyone in.
Yeah.
But for whatever reason, they're like, you know what? Let's just show it off early, get people used to it, and get people like developing apps, because I feel like that's the big thing, right? Like they don't want it to be something that is released and the reviews are, it's cool, but you can't do anything with it. They want this thing to be stacked with content.
Which, because
day one.
The one big thing I want to talk about is like negates any cool, I think, with this. And that's a 2-hour battery life.
And that's also the un-Apple-y thing about this, like, is the external battery. Once we got over the eyes and how it looks and like, oh, this is so futuristic, your eyes are immediately drawn to that cable that they try to tuck away, but it's like, we see what you're doing.
There's not enough battery life on this thing to actually have watched the keynote that it was announced at.
Exactly. Because that is the complete opposite of what Apple's about. They were like so anti, like with the iPhones, this will not have an external battery. You will not swap out battery. You will not be able to insert an SD card in our phones. And so for them to kind of take this route is very interesting. Again, kind of going back to the point where it's like, I feel like this shouldn't have been let out of the secret room.
No.
But I think obviously that's also going to be a selling point once this thing's out, right? It's like 2 hours not enough. Cool. Here's our $200 battery packs.
Well,
that you can also buy.
And that's what I'm afraid of with it, because like, all right, if they're gonna go the tether route, why not make that battery double the size? It's not big. I would much prefer a 4-hour battery life versus a 2-hour. I'm gonna drop a bomb, and it's gonna be a tiny little bomb. It's gonna be like a firecracker.
Okay.
But like, I think this is the most out of touch product that Apple has ever released. Pretty much anyone who actually tested it has said this is borderline magic. And I don't want to dispute that. Like when I think they're out of touch, this is an amazing product. But like, this is for like 6 people in the world. All these features in here that they put a lot of time and effort in R&D, be like, oh, you know, the face tracking to show like people from the outside world that like, oh, I can make eye contact with you virtually. They spent a lot of time making this dead eye stare. They show like this guy like just wearing around the house when he's playing with his kids.
That was a beautiful moment. I don't know what you're talking about.
That was so creepy. They're clearly marketing this to be wearing it around the house and almost like never take it off. It's the way they're kind of doing this.
Yeah.
But then it's a 2-hour battery life. Who's going to be walking around with this and then having to charge it?
This is where I kind of differ a little bit. I kind of feel like we do get hung up on the $3,500 price, because that is ridiculous, right? But when you consider the technology, everything that's like packed into it, I actually kind of feel it's still in line and in touch with the, I guess I would say, the Apple vision. One thing that they literally glossed over that I kind of thought was one of the coolest things was being able to scan your face and have like a 3D avatar, as creepy as that is. FaceTime.
That's one of the things I hated the most.
You hated that?
It's just like the uncanny valleys face scan. Again, like I hear what you're saying. And like that's why I say I feel like the $3,500 is an appropriate price for this product. They didn't need to do that.
They didn't need to do it. But everyone gets hung up too the fact that like they didn't mention the metaverse at all.
I was totally fine with that.
Yeah, I was completely fine. I don't think no one cares about the metaverse. This is the setup for their future. And with something like that, you're like, okay, well, what's the point? Why be able to scan your face and have like this weird avatar looking and things like that? And I think that's why they went that route versus the Memojis, because Facebook or Meta have kind of like showed their hand in that like this weird kind of goofy cartoony metaverse people aren't really into. It may seem weird right now and there's kind of like no space for it, at least as of yet. But I feel like those are things that we're gonna see maybe not a year, maybe 2-3 years from now when Apple does kind of finally do their version of whatever the metaverse is. That's gonna be a part of it.
My problem with that is, because I agree, I 100% agree with everything you're saying, because at the end of the day, this is still just a glorified iPad. I do think there's super cool applications of what they're showing. I just don't think we're there yet.
Yeah.
And
no, I agree with that.
The thing that Apple has that, no one else really has besides Meta is they could just throw piles of cash. Seeing what they did, what was your favorite part of what like they showcased could actually happen?
What got me was when they were showing how like you could look at your desktop screen, right?
Yep.
And it can recognize that. And then now, bam, that's now enlarged in front of you, part of this like spatial situation. I feel like more people are actually going to utilize a feature like that.
Yeah.
More so than just like watching movies, because you can do that you can get a Meta Quest and do that. Those are the things where I'm like, this is the actual benefit of going with an Apple Vision Pro and having that technology that takes advantage of the Apple ecosystem. That's the part that I thought they did well, was that if you're gonna get into this AR, VR space, how do you implement kind of like the Apple standard into that? And I think that's where they really sold it well. I know we're talking about how like, maybe this is rushed or things like that, but one thing that Apple has also proven is like, for the most part, once they decide that they want to enter a space, it gives it so much credit.
And they are aggressive with that. I have no fears that this is going to be like canceled after a year. Like that is just not something I ever fear with Apple. Right. I also agree that like the spatial computing I think was the best. I think they showcased like probably the worst version of it though. Bring your MacBook out, look at your MacBook, and then we're going to project the screen up there, which is a great idea. But then like they show it like awkwardly like turning off the screen of the actual MacBook. It feels like they're pretty embarrassed by a lot of what they can't do yet. Which is, again, very, very un-Apple.
Even though they didn't show everything, what they showed still was, like, amazing.
Yeah.
And I feel like set itself apart enough from what's already out there, where they're like, we'll figure that out. And I think that's probably why they felt that it's more necessary that we show people now. Honestly, like this could have been a WWDC 2024 launch, and they could have been like, here's our Apple Vision Pro, and it's going to be available in the fall. For me, honestly, it actually kind of shows too how confident they are in their product, because now that this is out, companies are going to be all over it, working crazy, be like, okay, they're doing that, all right, we can do that too.
If it's something that we're pushing next year, like we got to get developers on board with this, but like a lot, I think what's going to sell this has nothing to do with any of these third-party apps. A lot of what this is going to sell for people is basically having an iPad that you have floating around your apartment in space. Could we, if we had another year of dev time, gotten it a little bit smaller? I'm not an R&D guy. I'm not a dev. So like I could be completely talking out my ass on this, but like it's very un-Apple to release something which seems, I don't want to say this is half-baked because it's definitely not.
It's definitely a beta. They're charging $3,500 for a beta device for people to beta test and then let them know, these are the features people actually care about. And then that's when they'll work on that, and then the Apple Vision SE. I just feel like they're very confident that releasing it now was the right move.
Yeah.
Because the first Oculus like Kickstarter first started, like how much advancement really has happened in the space to where now we have the Meta Quest 3 and what they're doing with HTC Vive and things like that. Like how much has actually changed versus like, we can play better games.
There's one thing I gotta.
Okay. It's a really big hack.
If TikTok's out here tracking my eyes, what are we gonna talk about? Apple using my eyes. They got little sensors in there to track every damn thing I do. The whole like TikTok being banned thing. Half that Discord was like, why does this app need to track my eyes for like silly little like filters or whatever? And here's a device that
it's all about that.
you'd use it by tracking your eyes. Now, I want to be clear. Like, I actually trust Apple to, like, you know, it's on device encrypted, like stuff like that. But like, this opens up a privacy like minefield. They went out of their way to say like, oh yeah, there's a different layer of tracking. A third-party app can't actually see what you're looking at. But like, how long before like some website or like some dev like figures out how to say like, oh, how do we match this tracking data to like target ads?
And I think that's probably why like a good maybe 10 minutes was spent just on like the privacy of this thing, right? And I think that's a big part, right? Like, they knew that just as we advance in technology, that's always going to be the big scare. Is like, one, it was just our information. Now, how much of just like us and our body movements is being like
you got a full facial scan. Right. So now you have a device that is capable of doing a 3D scan of your home.
But that's a good point that you brought up too, and I think Apple was smart in like not showing, like, they didn't show anybody outside. The plane was as far as they went, but everything was still like in a confined space. It was like, this is meant to be either used at a desk, either standing. It's in the privacy of people's own kind of like space on the airplane. That's like as social as it kind of really got. Where I think that was the big issue with Google Glass and why people were so hesitant, because one, this was something that was like announced. Like, there were a certain group of people who had their hands on it, and next thing you know, they're just like out in the wild. And it's like, whoa, what is this thing? And one of the things they touted was like, you can record people, you can take photos and things like. And there were a lot of people made fun of how you look trying to do that.
Oh, well, yeah. Anyone who's wearing Google Glass immediately deserved to get beat up.
Right.
All right. So we talked about the Vision, but there's a lot more that happened at WWDC. So like, what do you think about the Mac Pro?
I think it doesn't need to exist anymore.
I'm with you on that. Like, the Studio, I'm really happy that the Mac Studio, it was not just a stopgap product, like the same way that the iMac Pro was.
Right.
I think the Mac Pro is a great product for those who actually need it, and I feel like that's a very small number because it's actually a pro. A movie studio, a large recording studio, someone who needs that much power, like, oh, I'm gonna do color for Avatar 7 or whatever.
Right.
YouTubers, for some reason, like, oh, I'm gonna get this, and then suddenly fans are like, why would you ever spend $5,000 on a desktop? I could just go build one. Like, it's not for you.
Like you said, it still makes sense for a small group.
Yeah. It's a workstation.
It's a workstation. But ever since Apple's move to their Apple Silicon chips, like, literally when I saw that, I immediately sold mine because I knew the value of that Intel Mac Pro was going to immediately drop.
I don't think the Intel Mac Pro should have ever existed. There was better options to get like better power or whatever. But like, it's a workstation. It's meant for a high working professional. It's not meant for you who is, going in your bedroom. I feel like a lot of YouTubers like, oh, this is my desk setup with my Mac Pro. And like, so then people watch that and say, oh, this must be a personal computer. It's not. I think it's cool that it exists. I think it's cool that they added PCI 4, added a couple extra of the Thunderbolt ports on there, like fully taking advantage of the Ultra. 9 times out of 10 people, if you're looking to, you need some oomph, just get the Studio.
I guess for me too, it's like, it's the size of the Mac Pro now, right? Like, again, like, now that we're into these M2, eventually M3 chips, it's almost kind of like the trash can Mac Pro that everyone dogged. It's kind of almost like that kind of should have been where they were shifting, which ultimately kind of is like the Mac Studio. You can still keep the design of the Mac Pro as it is, but almost shrink that down even more. I feel like, or have options where if you want certain slots, you can get a bigger one, or like you were saying, I guess you could just go with the Mac Studio and have an external one. Weirdly, external stuff is usually anti-Apple, but they got the battery pack on the Vision.
I mean, the one we haven't even mentioned. This is officially the end of the Intel era. It's like
they're done. We knew this is what they were kind of like working towards, and I think they're actually in as crazy as it sounded back then, they're in a position now where it's actually turning out really well, especially in the gaming space, because they're finally kind of taking it somewhat seriously, at least in my opinion.
I'm salty.
Okay.
Because like I said, I'm a proponent of cloud gaming, but like, they have all this power. Most things just don't use it whatsoever.
No.
Like, you have like the Apple Silicon is so powerful and nothing uses it, which is negates any argument for like
why you would need it.
I am a fan that they're bringing a lot more AAA games. Resident Evil Village, one of my favorite games of all time, runs really good on it. Stray's coming to it, so like they are making this push for it. But one thing, as soon as they mentioned Metal 3, my hopes went up, and then completely got dashed. I'm waiting for them to come out with some sort of at this point, I feel like it would just be M2, Apple TV. That is just its own game console.
I literally talked about that on my channel. I feel like it's got to go that way, especially now that like they're doing like the whole gaming mode, low latency Bluetooth. For that, the one thing I've always said that Apple, if they chose to accept it, is that like literally the blink of an eye, can overtake PlayStation, Xbox, and Nintendo in a day.
That's bold.
It's bold, but it's true, because if they like fully focused on it, and like you said, say they released an M1 or M2 Apple TV, instantly you now have a little mini gaming console that you can connect to your TV on the big screen, where you can play Resident Evil Village, No Man's Sky, Death Stranding when it comes out. And then now, okay, I'm on the go. Let me take my iPad. Don't get me started if they release the iPad mini with finally bringing that M1, M2 chip in there.
You've been reading my diary. You've been reading my diary.
And then all of a sudden, all those like controllers and stuff that can be made for iPads, I feel like, oh, that's gonna start coming back. Now you got like your own like Apple Steam Deck replacement in that sense. Companies will then still have to port their stuff, because No Man's Sky was supposed to come to iPad. Still haven't heard anything, so they're probably finding some problems with that, but I'm sure we'll hear more about that in the future. And then if you want the traditional desktop gaming experience, you can play on your laptop or on your Mac Mini, Mac Studio, whatever. And the compatibility with, at least from like the games that have been released so far, yes, they are older games, have been pretty solid.
As soon as I saw the vision, I'm like, I think the dream of a Apple console, like Apple TV, is dead.
I see where you're going with it, and you're probably right. I just think it would be really smart, marketing wise, because they are making this gaming push. It's almost like they really want to go in that gaming direction, but like they know that's their Achilles heel. So they're struggling to really do it right.
I think Death Stranding should have come to Apple Arcade. I think they should have spent that money. Like, obviously they want to sell it again and do App Store, but like if they just dumped a pile of cash at Kojima and just be like, look, we want this to be on our platform. We'll give you 30% of every subscription we get from this.
Pretty much like making Apple Arcade almost like a Game Pass type situation.
I think that was the move they should have gone with. But
that would have been smart.
Let us know in the comments what you thought about all the products from WWDC. Like, follow, subscribe, go check out Royce's channel and
Apple Next. Check it out.
Check it out.